Check, check. Well, welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about how to make a highly customized Visualforce app Lightning ready. And my name's Kevin O'Hara. I'm the CTO of LevelEleven. I'm also a Salesforce MVP. I've been doing Salesforce development now for, I guess, about 10 years.
My name is Brandon Barr. I'm the lead Salesforce engineer at LevelEleven. I've been doing it for 6 years.
So we don't work for Salesforce, but figured we should put this in here. So this is the forward-looking statement, so make all your purchasing decisions based on currently available Salesforce functionality. We are going to talk about some stuff today that we're leveraging to help make our transition from a highly customized Visualforce app to Lightning a little bit easier. So here's what we'd like to talk about today. So first, I want to take you just through like what our applications look like and how they're built. Kind of set it up from there, because we're dealing with some pretty complicated applications that we built over the last 6 years, and so the transition to Lightning has been it's been a lot of work. So we'll talk about the code base a little bit. We'll talk about what our steps were to get Lightning ready early on, which we started about a year ago, and then kind of what we learned throughout that process. And then if we were going to do it all over again, especially starting now, like how would we approach it? And then we'll talk a little bit about like what our future roadmap is. So the idea is if you're coming from an environment where you do have a highly customized Visualforce app or just like a lot of Visualforce technology, it may feel a little daunting to try to get that stuff moved over to Lightning, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up some tips and tricks today. So essentially what LevelEleven is we're a Salesforce.com ISV. We're on the App Exchange, and what we've built is essentially a sales management system that sits on top of Salesforce. So we're trying to be the de facto standard system that high velocity sales teams use to manage their people, drive performance, coach better, and really just sitting on top of Salesforce and leveraging all the great things that Salesforce provides. So we build a lot of customized interfaces. So what you're seeing on the screen, like these are screenshots from our application. This is running inside of these are screenshots running inside of Classic. So basically, the way we built our applications is largely on the front end. So we're using frameworks like React and various other CSS frameworks, and we kind of use Visualforce as like a mechanism to serve up our applications. Then we run these big single-page apps. So as you can imagine, that's pretty challenging to try to pick that up and move it into Lightning. And so just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of the scope of what we're talking about here. So Scorecard and Contest Engine, those are kind of the two big main pieces of our platform, the two separate managed packages. And I put some code line counts up here just so you can see what we're dealing with. So in Scorecard, we've got roughly 20,000 lines of code, and that's mostly React and CSS. Contest Engine's been around a lot longer, and that's got 212,000 lines of code. And also what we've built is our own component library in React. We started this project about a year ago so that we could share pieces of our interface across our application. So keep in mind, like this is just the front end code. This doesn't include Apex, anything else other than front end code. So this is JavaScript and CSS. So as you can imagine, taking that and trying to move it into Lightning is a huge challenge. Not to mention, we've already built a bunch of tools to automate our workflow. So we have a pretty complicated build process too for all of our front end assets. Because again, like we're building so much in the front end, we need like a really good build pipeline, a way to generate static resource files that are easy to deploy for Salesforce. So obviously when Lightning came out, like our initial take at it was, well, we're using React, and React is a component-based framework. Lightning is a component-based framework. So how are we going to make this work together? Because we weren't ready to just kind of throw away everything we've done in React. I mean, you saw the lines of code we're dealing with here. There's a lot of intellectual property that we built. So our first guess was like, well, maybe we'll just try to figure out if we can run our React stuff like right inside of Lightning. And so while the docs actually say that technically you can run a React component inside of a Lightning component, that works, but what we found was we weren't able to do it because Locker Service eventually shut us down because a lot of our dependencies, like things like D3 for like graphing, a lot of those things are kind of blocked by Locker Service. So like we just ran into so many problems trying to get that to work, and we realized it wasn't the right solution early on. So just running it natively inside of a Lightning component didn't work for us. The next thing was a lot of that user interface you saw, like we've custom built all of that. So there's tons of CSS in there. We spent a lot of time on that, and a lot of it gives us our unique kind of look and feel and our flavor for our branding. So how are we going to handle this? So so the first thing that we realized is like if we're going to try to run things natively in Lightning, we got to get our CSS in there, and then now we have to deal with the namespacing that you have to do in Lightning. So as people kind of familiar with that, the .this keyword, and it allows your CSS to be namespaced. So trying to figure out, okay, so how are we going to take all of our CSS then and like get it into a namespaced environment? We actually wrote our own like namespacer tool. So, so at the end of our build process for our CSS, we would actually run it through this namespacer tool, which is actually fairly simple and would give us out like namespace CSS. But it was a pretty good solution for us. Had some problems, but that's kind of the example up there on the board. The other thing too is we do a lot with SVGs for all of our images, and especially early on in the Lightning days, there was I'm trying to remember what the exact issues were, but there were some issues with SVG support and some of the properties within SVGs that we were using. So we had to actually build a tool to handle SVGs for compiling down to get those in the Lightning components. Oops. So with all these challenges and just like the scope of like what we were dealing with, we really had like three options, and I'm willing to bet that most partners are kind of like looking at these exact same three options. Option one is like we rewrite everything, like we start over, write everything in pure Lightning, and that was just not feasible. It was going to be way too long. We've got a lot invested in it, and like during that time, we basically have to put our roadmap on hold because we would essentially just be building it in pure Lightning. Option two was do nothing. So we could just say we're not going to do Lightning. So a year ago, when Lightning was pretty new, I mean that option wasn't terrible. We could just put it off for a while because there was still, you still had customers like slowly moving into Lightning, much less than they are today. Like I think customers are moving a lot faster into Lightning now. But option three was, well, we gotta compromise. We gotta figure out like, how do we get there and not have to blow the whole thing up and start over and get Lightning ready. So we obviously went with option three. So really the first step was, well, we've got a bunch of Visualforce pages that are kind of, those are those single page apps. Like how do we get those into Lightning? Good news is that just kind of works. So you can basically enable your Visualforce tabs. You can get those into Lightning. That sort of works. There's a couple weird things, and we adjusted some styles along the way to make it look better. But in general, that was the easiest step of the process. The next step was probably the hardest step for us. So we have, who's familiar with like homepage components, like the sidebar components? So we have part of our application is called Scorecard. It's like an activity tracker for a salesperson. So almost think about like a Fitbit for a salesperson. Just like, am I doing the right things? Am I on track to hit my goals? So that was always a homepage component living in the sidebar, and that obviously would make a really good Lightning component. Trying to get that into a Lightning component was very difficult because again, it's all React based, all delivered via Visualforce, and we weren't ready to rewrite that. So when Brandon gives a demo next, he's going to actually show you like our initial implementation of this. And then, other than that, we tweaked some styles and we kind of packaged it up. So, so when we get in a demo, you'll kind of see how we did things. But we did the compromised version of this, knowing that like eventually we're going to like move to the better version of the 2.0 version. But it got us Lightning ready, which is great. And so what this really allowed us is like, first we were able to meet the demands of all of our customers who are moving to Lightning. We were able to run our stuff in, Lightning, regular Lightning pages, Lightning for Outlook, Gmail, communities, the whole shebang, without having to rewrite everything in pure Lightning. So with that, we're going to do a quick demo, and Brandon's going to take you through some of our initial implementation.
All right. So as Kevin said before, we had this sidebar component that we were really happy with, and our customers were heavily using. And we really didn't want to stray too far from that in our use in Lightning. So we ended up creating a Lightning component. Oops. That looks really similar. And it should look really similar because it's just an iframe, which is awesome. All right, so the iframe, or the component that we have, as I said, it's super simple. We have this component that implements Force App Hostable and Flexi pages available for all page types. Force App Hostable allows this component to be used as a dedicated tab, and then available for all page types allows it to be used anywhere in the app builder. So you can use it on home pages, record pages, the taskbar. Now available, you can do Gmail, you can do Outlook. You can put this component anywhere. And you see this iframe, we have a width of 100%. We really wanted to use all the resources that we had with Lightning, so we set it so it can expand and contract in the different environments that it's in. And we had a legacy height of 316 pixels that we decided at that point where we were just like, well, just keep it. The weird thing, I'm sure you noticed that there is no source in this iframe. As ISVs, particularly, URLs can be anything. You have my domain, you have namespacing, you have all sorts of stuff. So what we did, we wrote a mini or after render method. This after render method does three things. First, it finds the iframe element on the component. Then it does a request to Apex and gets the URL for the component or for the Visualforce page. Then it injects it into that source field, and then appends this lightning equals true query parameter. This is the controller, like an example of the controller. There's a lot more to it, but we trimmed it down for this. The get URL for Scorecard Mini just returns the page reference, like the string. And then this is Lightning iframe. This checks the query param that we are setting in Lightning. And on the Visualforce page, we have a check now for if it's in that Lightning component. This can let us go ahead and set some of the CSS to be different. So we have CSS for the Lightning component that adds in a few of the Lightning design system elements that made it feel a lot more native to Lightning than it did for the sidebar component. But then we still have this when it's not in the Lightning component, we still have our original CSS running. So the customers don't, they'll see the switch, but we can expand on the CSS for dedicated Lightning.
All right. Yeah, so as you can see, we just iframed in the Visualforce page. So it was actually, we talked with Salesforce, and it was actually a recommended solution. So the point is, you don't have to rewrite everything initially. Buy yourself some time, get yourself on a roadmap, and you could do kind of creative things to kind of get into Lightning. But I want to talk about some of the challenges now that we had with our initial approach. The first was, just going ahead and running your Visualforce pages inside of tabs. There's still some weird things that we didn't account for. So one is just the way that navigation needs to happen in Lightning. So basically our hyperlinks inside of our app would navigate within the tab. So even if you were in Classic, you would click the link and you would maybe go to another tab. Inside of Lightning, you would actually the page would change, but you would stay within the same tab. So because it wasn't really talking to Lightning and doing navigation properly. Obviously, just cramming something into an iframe has its own challenges. So one is, Brandon showed some of the sizing stuff. That's a little bit difficult to do in an iframe. We have the same issue with links and navigation. We kind of had to build our own thing there. And then obviously, running a component like that and then running the page, the actual application inside of an iframe, you sort of lose some of the big benefits of Lightning, which is the context, eventing, things like that. It's just it's just a page running inside of that iframe. So we knew that wasn't the ideal approach, but we knew that it was a good starting point, got us onto the roadmap to really being fully Lightning ready. So if we were going to do it all over again, basically a lot of what we would do would be probably the same. Again, we wouldn't go and rewrite everything. That's just not feasible. So with the Visualforce pages, I think our implementation would be similar initially. I think we would just kind of render those things inside of the Lightning tabs. Probably make a few more adjustments to the CSS, and then handle something or get something to handle the navigation and stuff better. So if we were to do it all over again too, I don't think that we would go and rewrite all of our CSS in the Lightning design system, but I think we would start to extract more things out of the Lightning design system just to make it just flow even better. Again, this is one of those areas where just dropping and rewriting this stuff it would take a long time. So, and we want to again buy ourselves some time. But now, with the component that we showed, that was the homepage component running in the iframe, there's actually a much better solution now. It's not yet GA, but it's called container components. So who's heard of container components? Okay, so this is basically Salesforce's answer to this. So What container components allows you to do is run, third-party frameworks like React, Angular, whatever you built inside of a Lightning component. And essentially, they've implemented an iframe solution, but they proxy a lot of the stuff, like the Lightning APIs, the navigation stuff, down through the iframe. So if anybody's ever worked with Canvas back in the day, Salesforce's Canvas, it's kind of a similar thing. So it was still an iframe solution, but there was communication up to the parent through a proxy through the iframe. So this is great. So it's not yet GA. I think it comes out in the next release. But this is the ideal solution for this, because if you need to just basically pick up your React or your Angular app and move it into a Lightning component, now you can do that with like minimal code changes. You'll still have to kind of hook up the API and the navigation stuff inside your app, but you're not having to deal with locker service, telling you can't use dependencies. So then, where we're going now is, so we've got, this iframe solution. We're building a proof of concept container component, and when that becomes generally available, we'll probably release it in a container component. But the idea is that it's buying us time, it's getting us into Lightning, we're able to meet the demands of customers, but and it's giving us the ability to service those customers while really getting to like true Lightning ready, which would be kind of probably building some of those things in pure Lightning. This thing is sensitive. What we're also doing is like any kind of like new greenfield projects right now, we're just building in pure Lightning. So the framework's great. It's come a long way. The APIs are really good. It's easy to work with. If you've been dealing with it for a while, you'll know this last release, like the performance is much better. It's great. So we're moving a lot of our new stuff into pure Lightning, because why create something that we're going to go rewrite later anyway? And then we're gonna migrate to the Lightning design system. But what we've been doing up until this point was, again, just kind of plucking the pieces out of it. So like, we imported the fonts and some of the other stylistic things, still keeping some of our own branding. But eventually we're gonna move into the Lightning design system because there's a lot of benefits of actually running it inside of that. And so we'll show another demo now, and we'll show you some of the things that we're working on.
All right. So as Kevin mentioned before, container components are really important to us, primarily because it's going to allow us to use our React single-page apps, but be able to expand on the functionality that they have that we don't have currently in our existing build. So I'll start off with like a simple thing like what container components entail. Lightning container components are really simple to implement. There's an npm module that wraps all the APIs currently available, and you just do npm install Lightning container, and then you import it to your React app. This is a really simple React app that shows you basically how to do it. So basically on component did mount and component will unmount, you can turn on and off the handlers. You have a handler for messaging. You can how to send a message and how to set state basically when the message changes. To handle that on the Salesforce side, we make a few small changes. We still implement app hostable and flexi pages available for all page types. We still have an Apex controller, but the Lightning container component now has a static resource URL that's just going to an index.html that's running our single page component. And we had to add an ID for apps so they know which or how to communicate. We added a controller, like a front-end controller. This controller handles the message payload back and forth between React and Lightning. We have, in this case, this is like a very, very rudimentary example, just for like consumption here. The payload that comes back has a parameter called name. And in this case, the name corresponds directly to the Apex method that I had in the previous demo. So in this case, it's called getAllMetricScores. It does the call to the Scorecard or the Apex controller. Apex controller then responds back. We build up a message response to React, and then we send the message back to the React app. It's really simple. And we don't have to have the silly re-render or after render injection. And the controller doesn't have to change. So that's where we're at currently. Like, we're working on this right now. Going forward, we really want to do switch to a Lightning, and that's really important to us because as customers switch to Lightning, we want to switch more and more to Lightning to follow suit. It's important to us as an ISV, and it's important to us as in the Salesforce ecosystem. So Kevin and I set out a while ago to build out a proof of concept. And we started with something easy, which is like the sidebar component. It's really not a lot. There's a header, a footer, and a list in the middle. So what we did is we have this parent component. This parent component consists of the request to the Salesforce, or the Apex. It does a refresh event, so we can continuously pull for date changes in data. It has a header component, a list component, and a footer component. We also have our massive style sheet, and this is an example of the namespaced version. So we have like, is percent, and we had to add .this to everything. When you build out your component, be sure to do an SVG. This like component.svg is the logo that you see. And then we have a scorecard controller, just like we did in the container component, that facilitates the communication between Apex and the front end. And then we added some helper methods. And once again, we don't have a render method. So I will show you what that turned into. So this is our new proof of concept that we're working with. You can see that it's a completely different than this version. Similar concept, but we wanted to pull in a lot more of the LDS since the Lightning design system, since we're rewriting it from the ground up. And this having the look and feel of Salesforce was really important to us, but we still were able to maintain our branding with our logo, and then we added this powered by LevelEleven at the bottom. And that's where we're going. Do you have any questions?
Yep. So what we've been doing is, I think a lot of the stuff that anything that new that we're building, we're just going to incorporate the Lightning design system, and then we're going to use that styles throughout Classic and Lightning.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we're kind of doing the juggling between two different style sheets, but I think eventually we're just going to kind of just incorporate just that Lightning style in everything. So the rest of our applications too is just it's all kind of customized UI. So it's not like it's living within some other Visualforce page with other stuff that's Classic styled. So yeah, that's kind of our strategy. There are any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, we'll be around if anybody comes up with any. And other than that, thank you very much for coming. How are we doing?
21 minutes.
What's that?
21.